Hi again. Television today is part of everyday life, and some call it the opiate of the masses. Whatever it is your cup of tea, there's something on television, most probably. News, entertainment, reality, sport. It has become integrated with our culture and our lifestyle. So where did it all come from? What we know as television today is a case history for evolution of invention. No one person discovered television sort of in a eureka moment. Rather, with the invention of light-sensitive selenium at the end of the 19th century, and also the introduction of electricity, people started to put in these ideas. Movie making was starting. Putting all these together, telephones, Alexander Graham Bell had voice going over wire. So inventors, people, visionaries were looking for ways for the big pot of gold, which was to be able to transmit images, people talking over wire for a start, and of course later on over the airwaves. So the first form of television that was in some way successful was by electromechanical scanning. Now, these were wheels with holes in different places that spun around very fast. Through a lens came through it to a selenium diode of some sort behind it that varied the electricity going through it. So it could break a television or could break an image down into component parts, into 30 lines. Tiny amount, as coarse as anything, but transmitted over cables. John Logie Baird demonstrated the first transmission of moving pictures. Very basic, but he transmitted them in January in 1926 in London. And obviously we know his name, Baird Television, the Logies. So many see him as being the father of television as we know it today. As I said before, his was a mechanical system scanned by a spinning wheel, but put into quite elaborate, I guess, cabinets. And also it ran in parallel for a start as it developed into the 1930s with radio, because radio was starting to burgeon at around that time, and radio was, of course, I guess the first of the mass broadcasting media. The system set up by Baird, which is a scanning camera, so the image comes through a lens, that wheel spins it, breaks it into its lines, reduced to electrical pulses, taken whether it's across the airwaves or through wires to a reverse of the camera where the electrical pulses work a light that again goes through a spinning wheel onto a screen, sort of a rare projection thing. But that system of an image being broken down into component parts, transmitted, and then put back together again in the television set is still broadly the same concept that we use today. But of course the components have been hugely sophisticated. With the invention of the cathode ray tube and running audio as a subcarrier with a video signal, so it didn't have to be sent out twice, and you didn't have to set up a television set and have your radio next to it so you listen to it. Television really burst onto the world scene. Television was introduced to Australia about 50 years ago, Queensland sometime after that, and I remember as a young person looking at the blocks when it came to, I grew up in Brisbane, and we couldn't afford a television set, of course, so these black and white television sets. And I remember just standing there as a child watching a test pattern, a black and white test pattern for tens of minutes, and totally enthralled by this magic that this could be sent. And that's how many young people saw their first, in my age group, in the 50s, saw the first television, staring through windows of the people selling it, because they were quite expensive in those days. But today in the world there are two main systems, and they're a little bit different. America and Japan have what they call NTSC, and Europe and Australia has PAL. These are two quite different systems. NTSC, each image is 720 pixels by 480, but it comes onto your screen at 30 frames per second. PAL, what we have in Australia, is also 720 pixels across, but 576, so you've got more pixels, so the resolution is better in the vertical mode, but it's transmitted at 25 frames per second. News, one of the things to be aware of, and we can see that when we watch news bulletins that are based on feeds from overseas, footage originated on NTSC has to be converted to PAL, and quite often you get a slight blurring. You can always tell it when you get to know what to look at between NTSC and PAL, but the conversions are quite good these days. Now, formats 4:3 is the conventional one. It's the ratio 4:3, and that's with what they call square pixels. Each little pixel that makes up that, and then and like I said, that's the 720 across, 576 there, are square. We've gone into widescreen or 16:9 television in recent times. In the non-high definition, like when if you look at a widescreen from an ordinary DVD or something like that, how they do that, it's still 720 by 576 pixels, but the pixels, each tiny little, they're not square, they're elongated horizontally, so that's how they're spread out. And if you look at it on a 4:3 screen, the images will be squished, and we all see that. We've also seen that, we've talked about the cathode ray tube that's been the bulwark of television, now going into the new technologies of plasma and LCD screens. Also would have noticed that when we watch, I guess, a movie on DVD, we get a letterboxing. As the black lines up to get the full format happens. And then if we're looking at widescreen TV these days, we've got our system set up for it. We'll see pillar boxing, and that's the term given to when you get the two black bars at the side, and the original 4:3 image is in the middle.